Blunt Cuts is a podcast fueled by creativity, curiosity, and empowerment.
We cut through the daily mess of life. This is unfiltered honesty.
Park your passive at the door. This is Blunt Cuts. Welcome to Blunt Cuts. I'm CJ, and today we're talking with the women behind the brand Pursey. Please welcome to the studio Randi, Jeni, and Holly, the founders of Pursey. Welcome, ladies.
Hi.
So glad you're here today. I first found out about Pursey during Minnesota Fashion Week, and I was going to an event where you guys were on a panel, and it was the day of the panel that we had, and kind of a chaotic day, but I was researching, like, who's going to be there, what's going on, how is this one different than what we're covering. We kind of did the behind the scenes of Minnesota fashion at our panel. I was like, oh my gosh, these brands are great. I love like the healing energy behind these brands that came together. And your brand particularly spoke to me. And I think as someone who has kind of been through this kind of sexual assault side of life, I was like, that's it. I need this bag in my life. I didn't go to the Women's March, and I have regrets, actually. And like, that's one of those like things that keep me up at night, that I'm like, why didn't I go? Like, why didn't I want my voice heard in that way? But that's why we have Blunt Cuts, and that's why we're here every day. And, but yeah, I think that idea of the march on really spoke to me. So please let's tell the story to our listeners. And, so Randi, how did Pursey start? As a brand in the three of you, how did you play bringing this together into life?
Right. So actually it started during the time of the election. So we are all three sexual assault survivors in our own, unique experiences with that. And as the election unfolded for us, we all were triggered in our own way. We were all kind of freaking out, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And it
was almost like the first time that it was okay that everybody was just like so open and talking about it. I don't know. For me, it felt like a time where we just had to, that was our one chance to like have a voice.
Yeah, I was horrified, like watching the debates, watching the election unfold. And I honestly was shocked as fuck that it went down the way that it did. I mean, I feel like it's still hard for me to find words to grasp how I felt that day, just sitting there expecting something to happen, and another thing happened. And that really just created a spiral, I think, effect for each of us in our own ways. I mean, I was crying all the time. I was like gaining a ton of weight. I didn't care. I was like happy that I was buying bigger pants. I felt like I just needed space. Seriously, for the first time ever, I was like, I need this layer. Like, I felt like I needed a layer between me and the world. And crying all the time, scrolling through Facebook, mad, angry. My husband's coming home. Like, are you going to be okay? And I find out about this Women's March, and I call my sister. And so Jeni and Holly live in North Dakota, and I live here. And I called Jeni, and I'm like, I am not okay. Like, I can't take a shower. I can't get out of my pajamas. I can't stop crying. But I'm going to this march tomorrow, and I think it's going to help. And I really think you should come. And she's like, well, I mean, I want to, but I'd have to get out of my pajamas and take a shower. And I don't know if I can either. And she's like, and I have plans with Holly, our mutual friend Holly, tonight. And I'm like, well, ask her if she wants to come. So I don't hear from her the whole day. Yeah. So the next morning, we're all talking, we're all visiting, and we're talking about the word pussy and how if it's fine for the leader of the country to try to use that word against me, like, I'm unwilling to do that anymore. Like, I'm reclaiming the word pussy. You're no longer going to try to shame me or make me feel bad about it. So we're talking pussy, 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 and we're heading out the door. And so I said to Jeni, I'm like, do you have your Pursey? And it was just like a slip of the tongue.
Yeah.
Like I accidentally called her that, her purse a Pursey, and we were dying laughing, driving the whole way over to the march in St. Paul and talking about, do you like my Pursey? Do you like what's in my Pursey? Hold my Pursey. And we were just joking, and it was
only I get to choose what goes in my purse.
I love
right.
it.
Yes. Yes. And it felt light, and it felt funny, and it felt joyful for the first time in a long time. And that felt important at that moment. And then when we marched, we were shocked at how many people marched in Minneapolis. I mean, what was the total? Like 75,000 people or something like that?
It was a lot. Yeah.
It was, my daughter was there. Another friend of ours was with us too. And I think we each had this moment in the sea of these people where we were like, okay, we have a choice here. Like, we get to decide, like, from now on, like, who or what has power over us. Like, yes, there can be things going on in the external world, and there are all of these things that are true and real. But at the end of the day, if we decide to be powerless to somebody or something or the government or the past or our limitations, then that really, at the end of the day, comes down to us and not on them anymore.
So Pursey became power.
Pursey became a statement of reclaiming our personal power in that moment. And actually, we all had heavy bags, and we were like, God, I wish I just had a freaking fanny pack. Like, we should make a Pursey. Ha ha ha! That'd be so funny. We could do that. And
but rarely does anyone
do that, right?
Have that experience.
Right.
You know how many amazing ideas I've come up at, 3 a.m. and I'm like, Brett, he's like, go to bed, stop. But I never do them.
Right.
So how did you guys make that shift to actually make one of the most incredible bags I've ever owned?
Well, like for us, before the Women's March, we get together a lot and we talk a lot about our lives and what we want them to be. And we understood at an early point, you only make decisions out of what you already know, right? So your life is in this container that you're not sure what's on the other side of it. And instead of thinking, like, what is it that we want to do to give us these opportunities, it was more like, how do we want to feel? What kind of experiences do we want to have? All of that kind of thing. And we didn't know what that was, but we knew how it was going to feel. Mm-hmm. And so when we started feeling that with Pursey, the idea of it, we just couldn't help but to follow it because we were having more fun than we had really ever. And it just was like, we couldn't help ourselves. We just had to do it. It was like once we got a taste of the other side of despair, which we always joke about because our first toast after our manufacturer meeting, we clicked our glasses and I said, to the other side of despair. And we were like, that's the honest truth.
Yeah.
Like our life completely shifted from one decision. And I mean, it's just one decision away for everybody. So once we knew, there was no going back.
And you are 3 women that just are not in the fashion space. We're not in the fashion space. Users of fashion, like utility, understood the consumer and what they needed, but really you're coming from a perspective of this was just what we're doing next and we made a decision, so we're rolling forward. And that's incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, it was really crazy. And one of my favorite books is The Alchemist, and in that book they talk about beginner's luck and the law of favorability, and we really had beginner's luck. I mean, I feel like Pursey was this thing. It was its own thing, and we just had to keep making choices to keep up with it or to let it go. And we were prompted over and over and over. And we don't have sewing skills. We don't have a background in those sorts of things. And we were sewing zippers and liners in leather on a plastic sewing machine, and it was turning out well enough to keep us going forward in it. I mean, Holly wanted to go manufacturing from the beginning.
So you started self-production.
Yes.
I don't think I knew that step of the game. So.
Yes.
Yeah. I had 4-H sewing skills.
Nice.
That was it. But, like, I also was like, my logical brain kicked in and was like, I have a full-time job. I can't be sweatshop hour, at night making leather handbags. And then we also quickly realized that once you sew leather, and you screw it up, there's holes.
There's one chance. It's
you
one
get,
shot and
one
done.
mark, and
Yeah.
then that's done.
So I was like, I don't know about this. How about manufacturing?
Yes. And Jeni and I just couldn't get there. Like, honestly, we couldn't imagine, like, what would that cost? What would that take? Like,
Yeah,
how do you
start?
do that? Like, what do you...
I had like $10 in my bank account. How do you call a manufacturer with $10? It might cost We were scared it was going to cost $300
For a sample.
which was a total, like, so far from the truth of what it was.
Right. Yes. So
talk about that. So how did you cross that merge into manufacturing? So how did you guys make that shift into manufacturing once you knew that your idea was strong and you wanted to really pursue this?
Well, I guess since it was my idea to go with the manufacturing, we did some research and I made a few calls. The first one was to Wabasha, Minnesota. And every time I called there, they answered as a different name, company name.
Nice.
And I was like, you're online as this. Is this who I'm calling? Yeah. And then so I would ask the owner to call me back, and they never would. So then I think we all at the same time were doing some research and came up with this manufacturer in New York.
And by
And-
research, you mean like Google?
Online. It's
Okay.
the Google.
This is my research. So, okay, glad we're all on the same page.
Complete research the whole time is Google.
Yeah. And then did I make the first phone call?
I think I did.
Okay.
So, to New York, you're calling
yes.
from...
So I decide to call this manufacturer to find out, like, what a sample is going to be. Like, how would that process even work? And the gentleman says, well, first thing you would need would be a tech pack. And I'm like, okay. And I write down tech pack, and, you know, he's like, and send me a few pictures of, do you have any prototypes or those sorts of things? And I hang up and I Google what's a tech pack, and I'm like looking at it, and it's like all of this Adobe Illustrator CAD
like
stuff.
all of the files needed to make the actual piece.
Right. So it's basically the blueprint for the bag. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, God, none of us know how to do this stuff. So I call back and I say, can this tech pack be hand drawn? And he said, yes. And I'm like, okay, we're coming to see you, you know? So that part was, you know, it was exciting, but at the same time, it was like, we still didn't know how much that was going to cost. They were vague about things. They would be like, well, it could be anywhere, you know, from really $1,000 to $10,000 for a sample. It really depends on how ornate it is. But the gentleman that ran the manufacturer seemed almost like grandfatherly. He was very kind, and he just kept saying, just come and see us and we'll sit down with you. And we're so close to Times Square, and you can come and do two things together, and we'll show you everything that we have. Just come out and see us, and just come out and see us. And we just decided that we had to go.
I love that.
Yeah, it was
so much.
yes.
So you get to New York.
So,
Had any of you been to New York before?
Yes, we all really love New York
Okay,
in
great.
general. We all have an individual love and a collective love for New York. So we were like super excited that we could, you know, have a reason to go there more frequently. But so we have actually Jeni and Holly have a garage sale to get to New York.
Love it. Way to go.
Everything's $1.
Everything was $1. Yeah, everything was $1. People came in and they were like, wait, what? And we're like, yep, easy. Everything's $1. One day only. What we don't sell, we're donating.
Oh my
We're
God.
going to
I
New
want to
York.
do this. I have so much junk.
We sold like $560 or something. I mean, that's a lot of items.
Yeah.
We had a lot of crap, and we got rid of a lot of
But
it.
people are like $1.
Right. We're like, here's our Airbnb, you know, money. And
Nice.
I'm saving up for another garage sale in the spring. So New York, here we come.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Well, I think that just shows in general, like, you guys knew you had a goal, you knew you had to crush it, and you did what you know, right? Like, and it's not overcomplicated, and you just did one step to the next step to the next step, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about this manufacturer. Was he as amazing once you got there?
So it's his company, and then his daughter, who's in her 30s, runs it. So we ended up sitting in the showroom with her, and it was a little like strange in the beginning, you know, just like she's going through our tech pack, and she's very stoic and very New York. and she's not quite sure about us, and she keeps looking at us, and she keeps looking at what we're doing, and we have our little janky prototype with us that has like, I mean, we've taken hardware, like we've taken apart things and put things back together and tried to, you know, make this thing that we're going to show her, and it's janky.
Yeah.
And at one point then I grab it and I'm like, put it around my waist and kind of stand back, and I'm like, now squint your eyes a little bit and just, you know, go a little cross-eyed. It's pretty cute, right? And she started laughing, and then she really warmed up. And then we realized that, you know, Jeni and I are both mothers, and she was a mother, and we started talking about all of these things and the story behind it. And I mean, I think there were tears shed. Like, it just was amazing in that moment then. And we had originally gone with the Little March On, and we had the Rebel, which is our other style, as a backup, but we didn't think we were going to do necessarily both samples at one time. We didn't know how much it was going to cost and if we could afford it and those sorts of things. And so we went planning on one sample. We left there committing to 3, 2 March-Ons, one in the pink, which was from the Women's March, and then a black, and then 1 sample of the Rebel. So we have a great time in New York. We get home. We get all of we get the invoice for what those 3 samples are going to cost.
Oh, so you didn't even know until you got home?
No, because this particular manufacturer does sourcing.
I mean, maybe
for
this
us.
is how it always is. I don't know.
I don't know. But they do sourcing. So they're going to make our molds. They're making our logos. They're making, you know, our custom ear. They're making all of these things. So they have to, like, you know, take some time to figure out how much those molds are going to cost and what are these minimums and how much leather do we need, all of that stuff. So we left there not knowing how much it was going to cost.
But you agreed to 3 samples.
But we did agree to 3 samples. I mean, at that point, we could have still probably said no, but we wanted pricing for those 3 samples. So we get home and we're sitting on the couch and we get the invoice, and it's significantly more than we thought it was going to be.
Are you willing to share?
It was like $12,000, probably $12,000, I think.
Yeah, that would be sticker shock from the 300 you were expecting, Jeni.
Right. So we are sitting there and we're like faced with some options, and Jeni's like, well, I mean, we could do less and we could just do more later, or, you know, what else could we do here? And then I was like, well, I mean, you guys, we did talk about doing the Rebel in like that emboss, like we were just going to do it without any color. And Holly's like, yeah, like all black everything. And we were like, yeah, let's do that. So let's add a sample, actually. So that sounds way better. That feels so much better than like taking 2 away. I guess and we immediately replied to the invoice and the email and said, please add a 4th sample. And we found the money within less than a week. Like, we all just figured out how to find the money. And I mean, that was the beginning of finding money for
the rest of your lives.
Till now. But, you know, we're still finding money. But, yeah, I mean, that's
so you got your samples and then you went crowdfunding.
Yes.
Well, because the sampling is just its own thing. There's also multiple steps after the sampling to get a finished product. Okay. So the first invoice was just for the very start of our business. It was not, you pay, you know, $15,000 and now you have products to sell. That's like, you pay $15,000 and now you can see what you will have if you commit to selling products. So that's where we're like, okay, now it's just like this constant, continual new part of the business every step of the way.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. So you got your samples.
Yeah.
And you went Kickstarter. Whose idea was it to crowdfund?
I'm not sure maybe Randi? I think it was Randi's. And that was something that we just, you know.
Yeah, we Googled.
You guys are really great at the Google.
And we are. And then we decided to get together in Alexandria. And we were just going to, like, go to Caribou Coffee and put together a Kickstarter. We had no idea. Then the Wi-Fi was bad, and then like multiple steps, and we ended up in a conference room at a hotel, and we're like, we're just going to be here for a couple hours. Like, cut to 12 hours later, and we're like, we probably should eat, and she keeps looking in the room and being like, you said it was going to be a couple hours, just like whatever, and we are like throwing together this Kickstarter page. And it is awesome. And then the last time we left, we were like, oh, we're just going to grab a coffee. And we knew she was going to be like, all right, that's it, girls. Like, you got to get out of here. And she did. But yeah, when we left, we had a Kickstarter.
So how did that go? How did the Kickstarter go? Was that the first stage after sampling?
Yes, it was. We photographed our samples. We used those as rewards. If you're familiar with or crowdfunding, you know, there's basically people are committing to a reward, it's called. So we used our samples as the reward. But I just want to say we didn't do Kickstarter to gain capital, which I don't know if that was
usually
the right
the point.
move, right?
Yeah.
Right? We didn't know. Honestly, we didn't know what we were doing. We used Kickstarter as a platform to place our first production order. So it gave us the opportunity to see what colors we're going to sell, and it gave us the opportunity to get them to sell basically the different styles that we had, so that when we went to our first production order, we knew that we could order a certain amount of a certain color.
So you used Kickstarter as a focus group?
Yes, basically. And to have an upfront amount of cash to place that first production order. We had already paid for our minimums. We'd already paid for those sorts of things, and we knew we were going to production either way, but it gave us just the opportunity to test out colors and to have a little bit of the cash up front so that we could complete that next phase.
So with the order, did this manufacturer have some minimums? Like, were you...
Yeah, they did.
surprised?
And they're kind of a boutique-y, small minimums, which was one of the things that drew us. Their minimums were only 24 per body style, which is that's small.
Mm-hmm.
So with our Kickstarter, we were raising the minimum to go to production, and we ended up being overfunded. We were able to order 120 handbags with what the Kickstarter did, which gave us the opportunity to fulfill those pre-sales and then give us a small amount of inventory to then start, figuring out what the hell to do next.
So yeah, are we at the what the hell to do next?
Yes, we actually are. So that was in December of last year, and it took until April of this year to get that product. So it took all of that time for the things to come in and the things to be made and all of those things. So technically, I think we would say we still haven't begun our business yet, really. Totally. But it probably is more of the starting point of it would be, this spring was in April was when we finally first had a bag in our hand, that
it's so exciting. I mean, and I don't take mine off. Like, I literally don't. I am wearing it all the time. I wear it all throughout. There's never been a handbag that I wear throughout my workday.
It's comfortable.
But it is, and you guys made some great selections, and you didn't compromise quality for cost, and that I commend you for that, because it's got to be tough.
Yeah.
Being at that table being like, oh, I like that, but that one's almost okay. I can't imagine, but you didn't compromise. The quality is there.
It is. And we are for women, and we're for, equity. And, our manufacturer has relationships overseas, and they asked us right away, are you willing to do that? And it just ethically did not feel right to us to be like, oh, yes, we're so for women on the back or on the front end, but on the back end, we're exploiting them. It just, it didn't make sense. And I don't like a lot of things, so I would rather have something that's very well made and that is long lasting and that's versatile, so that I can use it for a long time. That those types of things are important to us. Quality is important to us. Mm-hmm. Versatility is important to us. So we wanted something that we wanted to use as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, lesson learned. From this process that you could share with listeners if they're just starting or have an idea and they want to go forward. what is so far your biggest lesson learned? And each of you may have a different lesson. So
Yeah, I think for me, definitely, we decided at the very beginning that somebody had already done whatever needed to be done to complete this process. Like maybe we hadn't done it. You know, we didn't have design background. We didn't have retail background. We didn't have web design background. We didn't have marketing. We didn't have Kickstarter. We didn't have those in our wheelhouse, but somebody had done it on the planet. And so we were either going to tap into that person, learn from that person, or ask that person for help. And I think as women, we feel like we have to know how to do every single thing before we can get started. And we just decided that we weren't going to let that stop us this time. And I think that is how the biggest area of growth for me, because I can be such a perfectionist and I can shut myself down so easily, that to put it out there anyway or to try it anyway has been probably one of the biggest sources of my own freedom and well-being in my own life. So
I love that. Jeni, how about you?
For me, I have a couple. One is that for me personally, I feel like some of my biggest steps have come from my biggest place of fear. And so even just like getting that invoice and it being too much and then creating the fourth bag in that spot, that has been one of our bags that has been like the most loved because the energy behind it is stepping past and doing it anyways. The other one I would say is kind of back to the beginning of our conversation, talking about how you had mentioned, I don't know why I didn't feel the need to use my voice at the Women's March, is the use of our own voices. When we first started this, I started having a lot of dreams about not telling my story. And in one of my dreams, it talked about, I was in an interview, kind of like this. And I said in the interview, I realized the reason why I created Pursey is I realized that I've always been a person who spoke up for other people. And until I started using my own voice, I really did nothing in this world. I was just retelling somebody else's story, and not telling my own story only kept that energy alive of not using your own voice. And so the importance of telling your truth, the connection of that. When we created Pursey, it was not until Kickstarter. So, you know, a long time that I even told these girls what happened to me. So I created a company along with two of the most trusted people I know. The whole platform is about using your own voice, telling your story, speaking your truth. And I wasn't even doing that, you know? And so it just was, we feel like in some ways we created this to bring up everything we've ever needed to confront in ourselves.
Yeah, I love it.
Every single thing there possibly is. And so, yeah, the lessons of just really finding that truth inside of you and what that does to your life is just, you can't even measure it.
And Holly?
I would say exactly what they both said. And I'm usually not the one that talks at all, so this is so odd to me to, like, A, hear my own voice, and B, actually be talking and speaking up. But I, much like Jeni, like, am always, like, the cheerleader for somebody else, like, and for the first time, I'm like, you know what? Like, yeah, I'm going to tell my story as well. And then if I can just help somebody else along the way, that eased it for me, because I'm always helping everybody. Like, I always say that I'm always coming in last in my own personal life, and I will help somebody else before I help myself. And with this, I feel like not only am I helping myself, but I'm helping somebody else along the way as well. And also just like seeing the changes in people around me because of me is like so rewarding. And I don't know where I'm going.
No, it's amazing. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Like, I know I take my Pursey everywhere, which turns into me telling the story of Pursey and you guys. And then leading into telling, like, when I started using my voice, and Blunt Cuts really has been that place for me. And it was my commitment to this studio and to our listeners that I would come here every day as honest and authentic as humanly possible. And in my day, in my moment. But, like, that is not easy to do. It's not easy to, like, take the veil down, especially as someone who's one of those people that's, like, always parking her baggage somewhere else and not really bringing it forward, you know? So
Yeah.
You guys are doing that. Absolutely. You certainly are. So, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Tell us where we can find Pursey.
You can find us at purseyhandbags.com, and we're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter under @PurseyHandbags.
It's been so fun to follow the hashtag and see who is tagging Pursey. And I know I definitely do wherever I go, but I love to kind of see who else has their Pursey out and about. And it's so fun. I love it. And the brand is just starting, like you said.
Yes.
And now is the time to kind of get in the ground floor and use your voice and use your dollar in all the right ways. So, yeah, we want people to support Pursey because, I mean, I don't know. I'm a huge brand believer. So
Thank you. Yes. And lastly, I should say we do donate 5% of sales to organizations that empower women. And right now we support RAIN.
Rain. Okay.
Yeah. The nation's largest anti-sexual violence organization. So
Fantastic.
yes. And our duster bags are made by a company in Nepal that provides living wages and resources for women leaving sex trafficking.
Wow.
And they are handmade out of repurposed saris, and they're gorgeous. They're just beautiful.
Yeah, I kept mine, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is great."
Yep.
So, my daughter keeps trying to sneak it away for like her dress up. This is what happens when you're a stylist and like you have children. All of a sudden, I'll be like, "Why is there Versace on your mannequin?" Like, I know that one was a no, Ava Pyle, but I mean, you know, she's careful with it as long as nail polish doesn't come out or something.
Yes.
So, well, thank you
you.
so much for hanging out with us. And you can find Pursey at purseyhandbags.com, like they said. And if you want to tell us about your amazing product or business that you've made for women, please continue the conversation on Instagram. You can find us at Blunt Cuts Podcast.